Welcome back. I'm Rick Sanchez. There is very troubling information tonight about Bishop Eddie Long, powerful, well-known reverend and pastor who has a television show, one of those mega churches with 25,000 people in it. Just looking through the affidavit, it reads with very specific detail how defendant Long would come to this house where these boys were put to live and sleep, and he would sleep in the same bed with the defendants, how he engaged in sexual massages with them, how he increased the sexual contact to include, quote, oral sodomy. Overnight trips, defendant Long shared a bedroom and engaged in intimate sexual contact with the plaintiffs, kissing, massaging, et cetera, when the boys would travel with him on trips in private jets, sometimes flying back on commercial planes. Now, Eddie, how is it possible? You know, I'm just asking myself, and a lot of people are probably wondering as they listen to this, how do you coerce someone to do something like this based on the Word of God, for example? What does religion have to do with these things? What do they say took place? Was there some kind of ritual or something?
At this point, we haven't spoken with these two young men. We've spoken with their attorney. And so basically, what we have to go on is the documents we've been talking to from here. But when you read through this, one of the things that it mentioned several times is that essentially what they accused the bishop of doing is kind of creating this atmosphere where engaging in the words here, engaging in a sexual relationship was a healthy component of developing your spiritual life. That's exactly, that they say that that's what the bishop had convinced them of. And there's a couple of stories in here where this was a ritualistic thing that happened, that at some point he had chosen, and you'd mentioned this idea of Bishop being Bishop Long's spiritual sons, and that in these documents it says that this was actually like a private ceremony that had taken place.
Kind of like wedding vows.
Yeah, like a covenant that had taken place between Bishop Long and these two men, where essentially the bishop is saying to them, I will be your spiritual father, there for you all the time.
And they exchange jewelry?
Well, the jewelry part is one of the other levels of intrigue here, is that a few months ago, there was a break-in at the bishop's office at the church, there at New Birth Church. It turns out that two men were arrested for that. $100,000 in jewelry was stolen from the bishop's office.
That's one of these young men who's
Maurice Robinson is named. We have the arrest warrant as well.
He says he wanted to take away what this bishop loved the most,
right.
And that's why he's apparently referring to the jewelry.
These material goods, and we have spoken. You mentioned we've reached out to Bishop Long's attorney.
Why isn't he talking yet?
They say that they're still going over these lawsuits. They tell us quickly, but his spokesperson and his attorney have said tonight that they adamantly deny these accusations, that they're disheartened that these men had gone down this path in filing this lawsuit.
All right, listen to what we're getting from a lot of, not everybody, but there are some people out there who defend their minister, believe in him, love him as a man, and are willing to forgive him already. Let's go to some of those if we can. Rick Sanchez, stop it, stop it, stop it. Eddie is a man of God. Here's the next one that comes right after that. I don't care what the lawsuit says. Our man of God would never do anything like that. And there's one more. Until Bishop Long admits doing it or there is video evidence of this sick act, I refuse to believe it. So there is a small consensus forming of people who truly believe in this, who are saying, no, this can't be true. Now, B.J. Bernstein answered those people today during our news conference, and I want to share this now with our audience. Go ahead. Take that, D, if you got it, please.
These young men were 17 and 18 years old. That is not child molestation in the state of Georgia. However, I will tell you this, and obviously my background, everyone knows I'm a criminal defense lawyer and a former prosecutor. When I met all three of these young men, I'll tell you the first thing I did is when I met these two young men, I did the first thing, and the most important thing was I picked up the phone and I called federal authorities. I have to go ahead and speak out now because there are kids at risk. There are young men at risk, and that's why we've gone ahead and filed suit today.
All right, that's obviously not the sound that we were talking about, but at one point she goes on to say that this is not about the church. She says there are many good men in that church who can take over this organization and continue preaching the Word of God. So she gave a pretty direct answer to what Defendant Long is doing in this case. It's a heck of a story.
And I've spoken with her as well, and she says, look, for these two young men to come out and make these accusations is incredibly difficult for them as well, because they will
they're young men.
Right.
And then there's the whole issue of whether they're gay, and apparently she said that they're not. They tried to have girlfriends, but he blocked that. Right. In fact, let me see if I can read you that real quick, because I thought that was interesting as well. Coming back
she talked about how it's affected their relationships in today's world.
This is interesting. When the young males, confused by the sexual contact with defendant Long, find girlfriends or engage in sexual contact with females pursuant to their own desires, defendant Long initially attempts to block those relationships by increased contact and spiritual talk as to the covenant between the spiritual son and himself. It's creepy, but it is what it is. These are allegations. Bishop Long will have obviously a chance to defend himself. We invite him to come on the show and give us his perspective on this, as we do his representative. Eddie, thanks. We'll talk more about this.
We've made that reaching out to Bishop Long tonight, so everybody knows. We've tried repeatedly today.
All day long.
Yeah, as soon as this was filed this afternoon, we've let them know that anytime the bishop wants to come out and speak to him,
the answer has
one of his people are saying that, look, they're still looking over the paperwork. They're still looking over these complaints. This has obviously happened in the last few hours, so that...
no response.
Yeah, no response.
Okay.
So far.